One thing that I realized about narcissistic relationships is that they isolate you in plain sight. What I mean by that is that this is a hidden tactic that covert narcissists love to use, and the targets of this type of abuse don't even recognize that they're getting sucked into isolation. For example, when I was coming out of a narcissistic relationship and I was finally getting help, right? Help for myself, because at that time it's like, oh, something's wrong, it must be me. The person helping me asked me, they were like, when was the last time you were really close to someone, where you were authentic with someone, where you let somebody know what you were really feeling? And my whole life, I valued close relationships. I valued deep relationships. And it was at that moment when he asked me that question that I realized that I had not had any close relationships since the beginning of this narcissistic relationship, yet I was surrounded by people. So I was isolated in plain sight. So that being said, let's talk more about this topic. Let's dive in. For those that don't know me, my name is Michele. I'm a survivor myself of emotional trauma, narcissistic abuse. I'm now a trauma-informed coach. I'm a somatic experiencing practitioner and the founder of the School of Transformation, which, by the way, my YouTube videos talk about the what and the why of emotional trauma. The School of Transformation is about how to apply and embody the recovery journey. So if you're looking for help on healing after narcissistic abuse and emotional trauma, make sure you come join me live every week on Zoom. Let's start with the narcissist's why. Why do they need to isolate you? Think about a puppet master, right? A narcissist, like a puppet master, needs total control over their target, and that's exactly what isolation helps them with, to gain that complete control. And the reason really boils down to two things: power and supply. So from a psychological standpoint, the narcissist, by isolating you, makes you become dependent on them for validation, affection, and even everyday decision making. Instead of fueling from within, this isolation allows them to gain self-esteem by your dependence on them. So think about it. To a narcissist, they feel so important because you can't even feel good about yourself without their permission. You can't even make a decision without them intervening. You can't even validate yourself from within. You need their validation in order to hold on to any sort of truth or reality. That is a tremendous amount of power that they are exerting over a person. And again, the tactic that they use to gain that power is isolation. But this is their why. This is the power trip that they're on. By being in control of how you feel, how you see yourself, the things you think you can or can't do, having that power makes them feel important. And the really sad thing is that as they are feeding off of this importance over their dominance and control over you, let's talk about the damage that's happening to you. The reality is that our brains are wired for connection. Even an infant, if an infant isn't touched, if an infant doesn't receive emotional connection, it actually affects the growth of that infant. Well, even as adults, we need that connection as well. When we don't get it, our nervous system winds up getting stuck in survival mode. And so in narcissistic relationships, there's no co-regulation, right? There's rupture without two people being there for each other. It's almost like your significant other or family member feels like the enemy instead of someone that loves you. And so without that co-regulation, our nervous system gets stuck and becomes vulnerable to fear-based thinking, to manipulation, and as a result, we wind up staying stuck in the narcissist's web. And that's exactly why in the School of Transformation, we put the focus less on what the narcissist did, that's what the YouTube channel is for, and more on how to help your nervous system. Because when your nervous system is in this state, we stay stuck. And narcissists instinctively know this. But going back to their why, again, the isolation that the narcissists put people through, it's not just a strategy, it's actually their safety net. And that's because three things take place when they're isolating you. One, they gain that psychological control. When you're isolated, you're less likely to challenge their narrative or even to recognize their lies. In fact, it gets to the point where you think that the abuse is normal. They're controlling the story that you tell yourself about what's happening in the relationship. And your story begins to be very attacking of self and justifying them. For example, it might sound like, oh no, but he or she really does love me. Maybe I'm being too sensitive. Maybe it's me. You start saying things like, maybe I'm wrong that I feel that way. So you start being unable to even hold on to your own reality. So along with their psychological control, they also get mental validation. In other words, they're thriving by being the center of your universe. They are the sun and you revolve around them 24/7. And so by cutting you off from other people, they ensure that they are the only source of your emotional and psychological input, and they use that to fuel themselves. And the third reason why this is their safety net is because it protects their self-image. Since you don't have the opportunity to hear or listen to outside perspectives, then you're less likely to even notice their abusive patterns. And as a result, we don't seek help for what we don't acknowledge. And so isolation hides their behavior from other people while also making you doubt yourself, doubt your own reality, and put your inner compass into their hands. So far, if nothing else, we notice that the narcissist benefits greatly by this manipulation tactic of isolation. Now, when we listen to this, obviously none of us will want to go into isolation willingly. I know with myself, even though I shared in the beginning that I was isolated to the point that I didn't even realize it for so long, I know with myself there's no way I even realized I was being isolated. And it's because of the hidden way that narcissists do that. So let's jump into that part of how they isolate you in plain sight without you even realizing it. The first strategy they use is subtle criticism in regards to your support system. For example, they don't flat out say, you're not allowed to spend time with so-and-so. No, they're never that overt, at least not the covert narcissist. Rather than telling you not to be with that person, they undermine your trust in the other person so that you make the decision to not spend time with that person. For example, let's say your really good friend is noticing how you're being treated or manipulated. And so the narcissist is aware of this. They'll say things like, so-and-so is jealous of our relationship. We have to be careful. Like, they don't want to see you happy. They're always criticizing our relationship because they're jealous. Not because of the bad treatment, not because the person cares, but some negative underlying motive that they imply to your support group. And planting that little doubt in your mind can do so much damage. You begin to see your support group and your friends in a negative light. You begin to slowly drift away from them, clinging more to the very person that is manipulating you. And then they combine that with love bombing, right? So at the time that they're planting all these seeds of doubt with your friends, or family members or anyone healthy in your life, they are also showering you with so much attention that it's second nature to be spending more time with this person. And you're not noticing how you're drifting more and more away from other people because you're being showered with so much attention. And then the third strategy that they use is they create drama between you and anyone that they're trying to isolate you from. So they may do things that cause your friends to be angry and then make it seem like their justified anger is the problem. And we have to be careful because they're angry. Look at how they're acting. Forget about the fact that what they're doing to provoke it, right? That's something that they do. Or they might flat out add a tiny bit of truth and a whole lot of lies to a conversation they have with one of your friends. Oh, so-and-so, your friend said this. And they twist and turn it to the point that you wind up upset with your friend, thus triangulating you against them and causing that division. And if you have not seen my video where I break down triangulation, I'll leave the link here for you to check it out. But we've been talking about the narcissist, their why, and what they get out of isolation. Let's shift into you. what happens to you as a result of isolation. And we're going to look at 3 things that happen. We're going to look at what happens emotionally, psychologically, and even biologically. So emotionally, you start to feel so lonely, anxious, and unworthy. And you feel lonely even if you're surrounded by people, because what starts to happen is the narcissist can often surround you with people that are considered flying monkeys, people that support the reality of the narcissist. So it's not even like you can say, I'm alone, because you can be surrounded by people, yet be dying from the thirst of loneliness. And because the narcissist has been dictating who you are, right, and causing you to see yourself the way they see you, they've been changing your self-image. When you've been alone without any external validation from other people that know you, and without being allowed to feel like you know yourself, your whole self-image gets rewired. And you wind up internalizing the way the narcissist sees you. And your self-image basically becomes like your autopilot to where you go in life. Now, imagine somebody gets into a plane's autopilot system and changes it without the pilot knowing. The pilot gets in the plane, and no matter what happens, they're not going to be able to take it where they were planning on going. The autopilot, once engaged, is going to bring it to whatever coordinates it's been programmed to. Well, basically, the narcissist has programmed you to not be able to get to the places, the feelings, the beliefs, the successes that you want in life, but rather to where they want you to be. I can say from experience that at this point, when your self-image has been rewritten because you've been isolated and you've been brainwashed and gaslit by somebody that's narcissistic, I know with myself, I didn't even know who I was anymore. I didn't feel like me. The me that I was felt like a rumor, felt like somebody I knew a long time ago, and I wondered if I would ever feel like me again. The second thing that happens, let's go into psychologically. When we've been isolated for a long time from any outside perspective and not been allowed to trust our own perspective, we develop severe cognitive dissonance, where your brain struggles to reconcile the behavior that you're noticing with the love that they verbally say they have for you. Their words and their actions are not on the same page, and the brain gets stuck in a state of confusion trying to reconcile these 2 things that don't make any sense. And then biologically, your nervous system changes. Instead of being set up in a way where you're able to be your authentic self and you have a protective self that comes on when there's real danger or when your life is on the line, but then goes back to allowing you to be authentic when there's no danger, that gets changed to always being in a state of danger 24/7. This is where a lot of people say, oh, I walk on eggshells with narcissistic relationships. What that basically means is my ability to stay calm, to be present, has been replaced with a hyperactive need to stay alert for danger because I don't know when it's going to happen. And so when we shift into that traumatized state of being in the protective self 24/7, we lose our personality, we lose our qualities, and we get stuck in our 4 trauma responses, flinging from fight, flight, freeze, or fawn, flinging back and forth from one to the other. We're not being us when we're like that. We're becoming reactive because when our nervous system is activated all the time like that, we're actually living life in a different area of our brain, right? This is our prefrontal cortex. This is our thinking. This is our command center. This is executive functioning, decision making. Well, that's where we're supposed to be the majority of the time, and we're only supposed to be in our midbrain. If you took your fingers and put them in your ears to the point where they could touch, that would be your midbrain. That's your alarm system. The alarm system should only come on when there's danger, but we begin living from our midbrain, which means we lose our prefrontal attributes. We can't think clearly. We can't remember. We get confused. We live in what's known as that mental fog, which is full of fear, overwhelm, and guilt. Now, sometimes it's when we've been in that state of fog that we finally start to understand that something's wrong and we start seeking help. And we might come across videos that say, you need to leave. And I'm not saying if that's right or wrong, right? It's not my place to say to anyone what they should or shouldn't do because they're going to live with the consequences of their actions. But I will say this, whether or not you choose to leave the narcissist is completely up to you. Whether or not you choose to instead put down strong boundaries is completely up to you. But regardless of whether you stay or leave, I want you to know that leaving might stop and end whatever abusive treatment that you've been receiving from them. However, this change in your brain where you're living now in survival mode doesn't just go away when you leave. So whether or not you leave, it's vital to do the inner work to get you back. And so I wanted to end this video with some tips that can help you. Tip number 1, begin learning how to reconnect with yourself. No doubt you've been so focused on what they think, what they're feeling. Healing is about starting to realize that your thoughts and your feelings matter as well. Tip number 2 is to begin reconnecting with safe people. Start small. Reach out to someone you trust and share a little bit of your story. Rebuilding your support system is crucial. Tip number 3 is to learn how to ground yourself in somatic practices. Learning about the narcissist is important. Trust me, I never could have healed had I not understood what happened to me. But then along with that knowledge, I needed to find ways to learn how to embody the healing tips that could help me to break free of the consequences of the abuse. Even if the abuse ended, I was still suffering and I needed to help my body. And so we need to learn how to help our mind and our body to work together. Tip number 4 is about rewiring your self-image. The narcissist got into your subconscious programs through the back door of their covert abuse, and they rewired how you see yourself. And as a result, it is affecting everything in your life. I know because my self-image that I internalized from the abuse was so self-destructive. And so if we continue to see ourselves the way the narcissist trained us to see ourselves, the way the narcissist saw us, we'll still feel like we're suffering from narcissistic abuse, even if the narcissist is no longer in our lives. And if you're feeling right now like, oh yeah, those are great tips, but I can't seem to apply them and embody them, that's what I help people to do in the School of Transformation. So if you're looking for that live interactive support to help you, come join us live. Even if you're unable to join me live on Zoom, I just want to let you know that you're not alone. I've been there. I also remember what it's like to watch a video like this and then wonder, is this right? Is this me? Is this happening? Or to know in that moment that I'm watching it, that this is my truth, this is happening, I am facing this challenge of narcissistic isolation, and then the next day feel like, oh, well, maybe not. And I remember that confusion. So be patient with yourself as you're recovering from this type of psychological isolation. And just know that if you don't feel like yourself anymore, you can come back home to you. I won't lie and say it's easy. I won't even say that it's an overnight journey because it does take time. But if you're willing to be consistent in doing the inner work to heal, I can also say that it is worth every effort and every step of the way. It is worth it every step of the way. So hang in there one day at a time. And again, if you need more help and resources, make sure you check out my live weekly Zoom meetings where I help people to learn how to embody all that I teach on my YouTube channel.